Today, we will cover the advanced setup process for open broadcasting software to stream. This is part 2 in our OBS settings series, and if you're new to OBS Studio, we recommend watching part 1 first, how to set up your OBS to stream for beginners. We've got a link inside the description down below. Before Walt gets carried away with OBS Studio, I just want to let you know that today's broadcast is brought to you in part by Restream. More about them at the very end of the broadcast. Walt, take it away.
Okay, let's jump into it. Let me do some sharing of the screen here. Okay, so as you see, going back to the other video, we just basically went through all the basic, easy, cheesy setups. This one's a little bit more advanced. I don't want to say advanced and scare anyone away from this because actually I skipped all that beginner basic stuff when using OBS because pretty much back in the day, you kind of had to set this stuff up yourself, where it's kind of you pull the trigger now and you just are able to fire away. So let's go ahead. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into settings. Okay, what we're going to come down to is we're going to come down to the video, or I'm sorry, not video. We're going to go to output. We're going to switch this output mode from simple to advanced. So notice this is the reason why it says it's a little bit more advanced, but don't get scared of it. It's going to be really easy once I explain it. So the first tab we're going to look at is streaming. This is where we're going to set up our encoder. Now, we kind of briefly talked about this during the last stream. We talked about the difference between the X264 and what that is, and the NVIDIA NVENC H64. So the two things is your X264 is running off of your CPU. Your CPU is going to be doing the work of encoding. Or if you switch it to the NVENC, that is your graphics card, your NVIDIA graphics card. Now, if you have an AMD graphics card, it's obviously going to be a different encoder, but the idea is the same. Now, people have already started hitting me up in the comments. I love it. Keep them coming. So you say, for instance, say you have an i5 Intel processor CPU, and you have a real cheap graphics card, then you're kind of tossed up in the air. Like, which one do I go with? That's the thing. Don't worry about it. We're not going to laugh at you and point at you and this and that. Hit me up in the comments. Dale and I will try to get with you on that one, which one to go with. But my thing is why not try both? Experiment around a little bit. That's what I did. So I like to go with my GPU, my graphics card. So I'm going to select that for my encoder. Now, the rescaling output. For instance, if say you are going to downscale, so for instance, your base resolution is 1080p and you're going to be streaming in 720. This is where you can rescale here versus rescaling over here. But I prefer to do that over here if I'm going to rescale it that way. So let's go back to output. All right, rate of control is CBR. It stands for constant bit rate. Do not change this. I repeat, do not change this. A lot of people are like, oh, I wanted to mess around with it, this and that. Trust me, you're going to want to stay with CBR. And for the most part, the terms of agreement, this and that, for most of your platforms, they tell you to run the CBR. Now, our bit rate. Once again, Dale, how do we determine our bit rate?
We got to take a look at the speedtest.net or anywhere you can do speed test.
Correct. So what you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for your upload speed. Doesn't matter how big your download speed is. It all matters about your upload speed. So say, for instance, you're only getting 5 megabits per second upload. That's 5,000 kilobits per second, and you should not go above that. Matter of fact, I would recommend probably hovering around that 4,000 kilobits per second just because you want to have a little bit of wiggle room. Keyframe intervals, leave that to 0. 0 stands for auto. Presets, quality, keep that on there, and profile high, keep that on there as well. Okay, so pretty much everything, the rest on this, just leave it alone. Moving on, recording. If you choose to use OBS Studio to record, such as Dale and I do, we use it to record our YouTube videos for y'all. Here's the thing. I like to set it up. First off, you have your recording path. That's where the video is going to reside when you're done recording it. Now, remember, it is going to be a temporary file when it sends it there. So you need to go into that folder before you hit that record button again and rename that file, or if not, it will overwrite it. Okay. Next thing, recording format. I think it sets it up as, what is it? The MKV Dale, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Usually MKV.
So you do use that?
I use MP4 or MOV.
Okay,
Usually
that's
MP4.
what I was going to say. Yeah, I use MP4. I stick with MP4. Now, here's the problem with MP4 is if, say, some reason there's a glitch when you're recording it or whatever, you lose everything. So if you're recording, like, say, live content, you might want to go with a different file format, because if you, like I said, if you have that one little glitch in there, it destroys that whole entire file. It is lost, it is gone forever. However, if you're recording YouTube videos like ourselves, where you're just talking and showing different things, what's the worst that's going to happen? You have to record the content, and 9 times out of 10, the second take is usually going to be your better one. Audio track, leave it checked to 1. Encoder. What I like to do is I like to use the stream encoder. What I'm basically telling OBS is, hey, come back to here, and I want you to use these settings. So you could also change it here as well. Say you don't want to use your GPU, or say you're going to record while you're streaming. Aha. Dale, I know you were getting ready to ask me. That's why I jumped into it. So if you're going to stream and record at the same time, first off, I have to say kudos to you. You must have a very decent processor and video card, because if you don't, it's going to eat and tax the mess out of your resources. So if I'm going to go live and I'm using the GPU to encode, I might want to switch that over for recording to my CPU. So that way it's not tripping up over each other. So for instance, if you're multitasking, however, I don't record and stream at the same time, so I would switch that back to there ahead. So as you see, once you switch it over, this opens up a whole thing. Once again, CBR, leave it as constant bit rate. The bit rate, we can change the bit rate, so on and so forth. But like I said, I tend to keep it at whatever I'm streaming it with. Audio, this is going to be easy. Leave it alone. Dale, I think you messed around with Audio Light. What did you find by tweaking any of your audio
I
settings?
did it so long ago, I don't even recall. But at this point,
did it really make a big difference?
No, not at all.
No. And Dale, this is coming from Dale, who's using a what is that? A $300 microphone. $500.
That's 400, and then if you add
400,
the other things, that's
exactly,
definitely more.
He goes above and beyond when it comes to his audio versus myself. So leave it alone. Replay buffer. Okay, now when you click this, enable replay buffer, I was going to tell you to leave it alone, but this is kind of like a little special Walt bonus for you, because what I used to use this as my instant replay. That's right. You could set up a hotkey, Dale, on this. And I don't know if you remember some of my live streams where I would use it and I have the whole Sports Center theme pop up or whatever, which, you know, I wouldn't do that out on Twitch because I would get the old, hey, that's copyrighted notice. So what it will do is it will go back, and the setup for default is the past 20 seconds of your live stream. So once you hit that key, it will go back and it will play that 20 last seconds of your live stream. So it's really great. But before you do this and check this, just know this, as you see, it will use up your memory. This is your actual physical memory, your memory sticks or your RAM that's setting in your computer. So once again, we're tapping into resources that you are going to want or possibly need for your live streaming. This is kind of that next level thing. So, you know, I might make a video on that. Leave a comment in the comment section, and maybe I'll show you how to make up a really cool instant replay for your live streams. Okay, moving along. We're going to go now. We're just going to close that out. We're going to hit apply. So that's the advanced settings. Now, a lot of people kind of get tripped up on scenes, sources, and the audio mixer. And by the way, even if you're, say, streaming on Twitch or YouTube and whatnot, I'm going to be coming out with a book for live streaming on Facebook. I go really in depth on these features. So keep an eye out for that. I'm finishing that up as we speak. So the scenes, think about it this way. You're a director of a movie. When you're doing it, you are the actor, the director, the producer, so on and so forth when you're live streaming. Scenes is, for instance, in a movie or a TV show, you're setting up scenes, different angles or whatever. For instance, we are looking at my home scene right here, where it just has my cam and then the background border where I could do an intro or talk to you or whatnot. And then I could switch over to what is called the alt scene. Now, if you noticed, I had what was called like a soft fade on that. You can actually switch it over to a stinger. I'm going to do a whole video on that. Dale, I know you told me that I even downloaded and installed it, but there's the thing that we're going to go more into details on stingers on that. By the way, there is a video in the past where we actually hired Fiverr artists to do stingers for us, which is actually quite hilarious. But now, as you see, this is one of my interview screens, and I just happen to throw my other camera into the mix as well. So you can just see different things that you can do in OBS. So speaking of different things, let's take a look at our sources. Now, this is everything that you're going to use to create your scene. Now, for instance, on home scene, I'm using one of the cameras that is actually here on my alt scene. Does that mean I need to change everything? No, you actually, when you go to add it, it will say, would you actually like to add this item or currently select this? So you could type in a new item, put it in there. For instance, let's try to do that. Let's go ahead and let's go with video capture device. Let's try to add another camera. As you see here, it says create a new one. But as you see, I have all three of my cameras. I have the Logitech Brio, the Logitech C920 HD, and the Logitech StreamCam. So let's go ahead and add the existing Logitech Brio. We're going to hit OK. And there you go. There's the Brio. I can move it around. I can resize it. I can tweak it with filters. We can add all sorts of stuff. That's a whole entire video in itself. So we'll dive more into that as we move along with this series. Say you don't want that, or you're not going to use that particularly today. Instead of deleting it, all you have to do is click that eyeball and it goes away. Or say I do want to use it, but I want to use it, say down, I don't know. We'll say here. And I'm afraid I'm going to move it and bump it. You hit that lock key. So now I can't play around with that. I can't do anything to it other than turn it on and turn it off with the eyeball. Here's another feature I like in the sources, and I recommend you do this, is use what is called your groups. You can add groups. So for instance, as you see here, I have my two cams, which is right here. Hang on, let's unlock them so you can see. So I could select each one of my cams. And it's kind of hard to see the highlight. I picked the worst background, Dale. But anyway, it's highlighting in red. So when you group them together, for instance, if I leave the group unlocked, I can select the group. Watch this, Dale. Now I can move the two cameras around together in unison. So say, for instance, I change my background and maybe, you know, the positioning of the cameras change up to here. I can just move it up instead of taking each individual one and painstakingly move it. This comes in handy when you start layering a bunch of stuff. And by the way, when it comes to sources, top is king. That is going to be the very first thing that the viewer sees. The very bottom should always be your background because everything is going to be layered on top of that. So think about that. A lot of people hit us up on alerts and they're like, hey, I hear my alert going off, but I don't see it. 9 times out of 10, it's because it's sitting so far back in the layers. Now onto the audio mixer. The audio mixer is pretty self-explanatory. Now, as you see here, I have the Logitech Brio and the Logitech C920 HD. You're figuring, wait a minute. Well, you're using a microphone. We see it right there. Why would you have those? Well, as you see, I have them muted because those cams actually have built-in microphones. A lot of people will hit this up, Dale. You know you've gotten these. Why do I have an echo? That is a comment we'll a lot of times get, and that's because the fact that most likely you're using a microphone or maybe you're using a gaming headset, but you forgot to mute the microphone on your cams. So those two microphones are going, but they're not going to quite capture your voice, you know, saying like right on top of each other. So it's always going to kind of have that echoey effect. Or you're not wearing cans or some sort of headphones and your speakers are playing that sound and it's picking it up and it's reverbing. And then what it'll do is it'll loop. So if you get a looping echo, that is because the fact that your speakers are playing that sound and your microphone's picking it up and it's just looping it through OBS. If you have an echo, it's because of the fact that you have another microphone on elsewhere. So if you see the green meter bouncing, that means it's no go. So as you see there, it's on, now it's off. Another way to make sure too is what you see I do is I will take that slider. Hang on. Now it's not going to let me do it. Oh, there we go. Okay. As you can see, you move the slider up and the slider back. Boom. I also have the microphones disabled in the Logitech control center as well too. That way, if I forget to turn it off in OBS, I have my butt covered on that way, but it's always a good habit to do that. Now, as you see at the very bottom, I have the Scarlett Focusrite. And when you're doing these different things, you're adding your different audio features, I highly recommend naming them, because when you start throwing a lot of layers on in your sources, things tend to get lost, especially in the audio mixer as well. But as you see where my voice is bouncing around, I'm hitting in that yellow. That is the sweet spot. That is where you want to be. If you're in the red, you're peaking out, you're blowing out people's eardrums. That is not a good thing. If you're staying in the green, say for instance, let me back up here. So I'm still talking, but I'm quite in the green. Now you can hear me, but it's going to be less faint, versus when I come back closer to the microphone, then I'm still in that sweet spot. So you should be peaking somewhere around this yellow area right here. Now, if you're in the green, that's fine, but you're going to have people turning their volumes up. And then once you start playing background music or game, you know, a lot of times they don't have that dialed in as well. And speaking of games and background music, that is when you want to have, usually what I look for around that -40 to -35 green zone when it comes to mixing it. I always want my voice to be a little bit louder than the game or the music in the background playing, and that way it's a little bit more soothing. Now, for instance, if you're playing something that is important for your viewers to hear, say we're doing a reaction to a news report or a video or whatnot, then obviously you're going to want to have that closer up into the yellow with your voice as well. But just know this, if you go to talk over it, it's not going to end too well. So you always want to have your voice slightly higher than the content that you're providing as far as background sound goes. Real quick, scene transitions, because I've kind of babbled on a little too long on the audio mixer there. Scene transitions. So don't use cut. Cut is, as you see, we'll select cut. It's hard on the eyes. So if I'm doing this during a live stream, I'm gonna throw somebody into seizures. What you want to do, even if you don't want to use stingers, or say you can't afford a stinger, you don't like the free ones that are out there, at least go with a fade. And then usually I like the sweet spot of 1,000 milliseconds. I think it starts at 400 or 600, Dale. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But 1,000 milliseconds I find to be good. And now, as you see, it kind of does that fade in, fade out. The longer you set it, so let's do 3,000 milliseconds. Let's see what that looks like. See, now we have a slower fade. So it's a matter of taste and preference. Just stay away from the hard cuts. It tends to be like jump cuts on YouTube, and y'all know how YouTube videos are that have like 100 jump cuts, and it's only a 3-minute video. It's kind of hard on the eyes, and I'm usually lost interest and I bounce out. Okay, so that's pretty much it when it comes to these advanced settings. Now, mind you, there's a little bit more involved. I can show you a lot of tricks and tips when it comes to OBS Studio. There's a lot of add-ons that you can do with OBS Studio as well. And we're going to cover that in many more videos. Matter of fact, if there's something specific you want to see, go ahead and drop it in the comments or holler at us right now live, and I'll see if I can't cover them right now.
This was a lot of really good suggestions. Go ahead and bring it back to the normal screen. This is fantastic. Yes, if you have any kind of questions, concerns, or comments, make sure, of course, you drop them inside there. That was a lot for a new streamer. So if you do have questions, please don't feel ashamed or scared to just hit us up inside the comments, or hit us up over on Twitter at tech_streaming. Again, that's tech_streaming. That's Walt, actually, who answers all that. Now, go ahead, do me a huge favor. If you'd like to support the cause, you enjoy the stuff that we're doing here, one of the best ways to do that is get yourself a free account with Restream by heading on over to livestreamingtech.com/restream. It is one of our preferred ways to kind of doing things. And now, while we're at it, I want you to click that video that Walt is crushing his face.
Don't they get $10 if they do the Restream, or is that no longer going?
They do, but also they need to click on your face right now. So it's clicking on Walt's face. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. We will see you next week.